Hey guys, it's Jake here, and I'm back with a video on how to fix your stuck fuel door on your Jeep Grand Cherokee or Durango or similar make and model vehicles. You probably found this page or this video by doing a search online and finding there's several videos on how to fix the fuel door. Now, some people will tell you to use the emergency fuel door release in the trunk, and that is an option. But what I do to get the fuel door open, or what I have been doing for a couple months, is I just put a soft, thin wallet right in the crack on the fuel door, and I press the button, and it'll pop it right out. You can do anything similar where you put pressure or even have someone pull on the door while you're pressing the button. If that doesn't work, then you will need to use the emergency fuel door release. And if you go to the instruction manual, it'll walk you through that process. Okay, fair warning on this one, I would rate this repair on an 8 out of 10. It's more difficult than I first thought. There is a good chance that you can scratch your paint if you're not careful. And there's a good chance that you'll break the 2 plastic tabs on the fuel door mechanism, which I did myself, and I know another YouTuber did as well. They're just really fragile. But the good news is I broke both tabs and it still fit right back in place and had no issues, and it keeps working fine. So I wouldn't stress over that, and you could always buy a new plastic mechanism there if you need to. All right, step 1, you want to remove the painted fuel door. So there's a little black plastic tab. You'll pry a screwdriver in there and slide it off, get that out of the way so you don't scratch it. And then put down some blue painter's tape below and above the fuel neck where you're going to be working. And then later on I actually ended up adding a little more tape right where the door opens and hits the car, just to prevent any scratching. Okay, next we need to get the door lever mechanism out of the way. So we'll use a flathead screwdriver here, and there's 2 very fragile plastic tabs, and all you need to do is to be able to get them down enough so that it will slide left out of the way. So if you keep them pressed out and you pull to the left, the whole thing will slide out. But this is where it's hard not to break a tab. Now, I don't want to cut the video here because I want you to see it's a bit of a struggle to get it out carefully. So let's just let it play out here. Once it's out, there's going to be a cable connection for the emergency release, and there's going to be electrical connection. And I leave that in place, and I just rotate this and push it behind to get it back into the fender of the car and out of the way. Next, there's a black plastic ring around the fuel filler cap, or lack of cap in this car, and you're going to pull that right off. Set it aside so you don't forget it. Now our goal here is to get out this big plastic housing that has a flexible rubber gasket area around the filler neck. The first thing I do is take a water-based lube and put it all around the fuel neck where the rubber gasket is, because we want that to be real slippery and slide out. Otherwise it's going to hang up on there and be a lot harder. Here's where you need to be really careful having metal screwdrivers next to the white paint. What I did was use 2 flatheads, one to pry out the gasket and one to get behind it, and that will give you a little leverage to undo 2 tabs on top and 2 tabs on the bottom. You don't have to get the screwdriver right on the tab, you just have to press down enough on the housing to get them to release. But be very careful with metal tools, it might even be better with plastic. So now I use a plastic pry bar and I leave it in place just to create the gap before I move on to the bottom section. This was probably the easiest portion of the repair. It's not as hard as it looks. And once these two tabs on the bottom are pushed up a little bit, the entire housing will release. You can see there's tension around the rubber gasket on the fuel neck, so that'll be the next place we need to focus on getting it to slide off. You'll have to work your way out. You'll get about 80% of the way, and then it will not budge whatsoever because there's a harder plastic in the back there, and you'll need to use a screwdriver in order to pry the fuel neck to the right in order to pop and release the black housing. I struggled here for about 5 minutes trying all different ways to get it to slide around the fuel neck before I realized it's just not going to go, and you need to get a screwdriver in deeper and pry it off, but be careful not to rip the rubber gasket when you do that. So this next shot will show you how to get good leverage to push the fuel neck out of the way. So I'll get the metal screwdriver deep down so as to not tear the gasket, and I'll pry the fuel filler to the right. And that will release the black housing. Now on the bottom of the housing will be a fuel drain. It's very easy to forget about it when you put it back together. So I'll try to remind you at the end of the video to plug that back in. Alright, that exposes the black plastic housing. You can see how lubricating that area made it slide out easier. And let's take a look at the spring here. The spring is in place, but the black plastic pole that goes down is not poking through the other side of the housing. It's crooked, and that's why the fuel door was wiggling, and that's also why it was getting stuck. So it should be going all the way through that hole there. It took me a minute or two to figure out how to get it to go back through that hole. So you'll just have to play with it, line it up, push hard but not too hard until you can get it to go all the way through, and then just put the spring back in place. Okay, so that's what it looks like when the plastic pole goes all the way through, and we'll just put the spring back on. It was hard to do in the camera. I had to put it on the ground. So you'll see this shot go away and then come back with the spring back on. Okay, we're ready to put it back in. So you'll put the left side back in like it came out, and then you'll reattach the fuel drain hose first. Don't forget that, because you'll get it back all together, then have to pull it out again. Okay, now we need to get part of the fuel filler back through the rubber gasket. It goes in pretty easy, but you'll probably want to use some leverage of the screwdriver to push the fuel neck to the right, and that'll allow it to slide back in. Now this is where I really struggled. You have to get the electronic lever mechanism back into the fuel housing here, and there's just no room. So I broke the two black plastic tabs as I'm trying to get it back through there. And some people have gone through the left rear fender. So you would jack up the car, take the wheel off, undo a couple screws, take the inside fender off and reach from inside, but I thought I would just keep going this way. I did break the two black plastic tabs, but you'll see here in a little bit it doesn't really affect its performance, and it stays in place naturally the way that the fuel door closes. Okay, once you get the mechanism through, line it up with the black tabs towards the top. There's kind of a track system in there, so slide it back in its track and up to the right. And then you can close the fuel door and test it out, and then the way it works is it pushes it to the right. That's why the black plastic tabs are not super crucial in this case. So here I'm just test fitting it to see what would happen if the tabs were to allow it to slide left. And what happens is as you close the fuel door, it pushes it right back to the right, back in place. So not an issue here. Next, put that black plastic ring over the fuel filler cap. Remember, if you didn't get the drain hose, you need to get it in now before you put it all back together. And then the last item, we need to put the painted fuel door back into place. It slides back on a track just like when you took it off. Alright, that's the end. I know it's a long video, but I wanted to let you guys see what the struggles were and how I got through it. And here's a quick test. It works perfect now. So if you like this video, if you found it helpful, please subscribe so you can see more future Fix It videos with Jake. And give us a thumbs up if you liked the video. Thank you. Bye.